millionaire on my podcast and I asked him, how did you build your intuition? And he said to me, I used to go and ask my mum or my dad a question when I was young, and they both used to say to me, you know the answer, you know it. I never gave him the answers. So he had to go away and figure out the answers for himself. And that in itself is the point I'm trying to make here. You have a purpose. Yes, I can help you get there, but you need to ask yourself, what is that purpose? How are you going to make it happen? How are you going to get there? And you do it by thinking about it. Asking yourself not what you're going to do when you grow up, but what problem you want to solve, and then matching your life to that problem. The final thing I'll say, you don't have to do this thing on your own. Let's say you care about climate change. And I would just say, we don't need to save the planet, we need to save humans. When the humans are gone, the planet will be fine. But let's just say you care about saving the planet. You can go and work with other people doing something in this space. The only thing I would say to you is make sure you ask for equity wherever you work. I'll come to that a bit later, how you do that and why you should do that. But that can be still a way for you to have the life you want. You can find your purpose and then go work with someone that's actually doing it. So in my organization, behind the camera right now, is a whole group of people, talented people that care about the same thing as me. So they can go off and help people in their own way like they want to, or we can come together as a team and solve the problem together that people don't have the knowledge they need to do what they love. What I have noticed is that once you find your purpose, and this is what you need to be careful of, is that you don't think that it's such a big purpose like solving the world's problems, that you don't do it. You can team up with other people to do it. And I will tell you, 1 + 1 = 11. Remember that. Once you know your purpose, you can seek out people and communities and old days tribes to help you go and fix this problem with other people. But if you don't know what that purpose is, you won't do this and you will get stuck working on someone else's purpose, someone else's destiny. And I promise you, it's harder to work for someone else than work for yourself, despite what you have been told. How to find a co-founder. Now, if you're someone that likes to work alone, you can perhaps skip this bit. But I would say to you before you do, make sure you understand the power of a co-founder. Sometimes we get caught in our own ignorance bubble. We think we know what we know, but you don't know what you don't know. So be cautious before you skip this section that you're absolutely sure that a co-founder cannot bring you value. I will tell you first up why a co-founder can bring you value. It's a bit like if you get a gym membership, you probably don't go to the gym. But if you have a buddy who goes to the gym every morning, you often have accountability and you go. For me, that's one of the number one reasons I love having a co-founder. Now, there is a counter argument to having a co-founder you'll hear from many people, which is, well, why would you give up 50% of your company to have a co-founder? I personally would rather have 50% of a business I enjoy that's successful than 100% of a nightmare and a failure. And I honestly think, with all my heart, that if you get a co-founder, your life is better. How do you get a co-founder and what should you look out for is something I'm now going to cover. But I want to just say, you have to think carefully about the equity structure. And later in this video, I'm going to talk about equity and it's going to be important and it's going to connect back to this. But for now, I'm going to talk in this bit about how to get a co-founder. Now, the first step is to identify what I said earlier, which is what do you love to do and what do you hate to do? Be honest, be clear. Hate and love, right? Hate and love. Now, once you've identified what you hate to do and what you love to do, you can identify what is the perfect co-founder. Because you want someone that has the opposite skill to you, but, and this is very important when looking for a co-founder, I'm going to put it as number 2, has the same moral code. This process of finding a co-founder is pretty much the process of probably finding a partner in life. You're going to spend a lot of time with this person is going to become literally your business life partner. And if you do it right, it is for life. Like I have in business, done businesses with people, and even when I've sold that company, I've done another business with them. If you get it right, it is a lifelong partnership. And so you want to make sure you're honest and clear about what you hate doing and what you love doing so that the person comes in and works with you. One, doesn't question you or cross over with you, lets you run your area and gives you respect. Equally, you have the same with what they do. You write down exactly, in detail, what this person looks like. And I would go as far as to say, you write down how tall they are, what they look like, how they speak, their background, where they're from, everything you can possibly think of. Just as if you're picking a partner in life. What is it you're looking for? Write down every detail. The reason I say the more detailed you are with it, the more likely you are to manifest it. You aren't going to be looking out for something unless you make it very clear what you're looking for. I mean, it's the red car theory, right? If I suddenly tell you the words red car, you're probably going to see a lot of red cars. But if I don't mention red cars, you probably haven't seen one at all today. You have to list out what you want. So you've identified what you love doing and what you don't love doing. You've identified your own moral code. And moral code, I can go into it a little bit more. It's quite a complicated thing, but there is one quick hack on this I can give you. Whenever I'm trying to find out whether or not someone's good, I don't care about money. I care about reputation. So I don't want to accidentally end up working with someone that all they really care about is money. And I have this test to check. I will say to them, what if from this day until you're 70, so let's say you're 30 now, in the next 40 years, you'll have the most amazing life. 3 houses, 1 in New York, 1 in Hong Kong, 1 in London. Anywhere you go, people will love you, private jets, everything you need for the next 40 years. That's your life. And in 40 years' time, however, there is a catch. You'll get to 70, and then everyone will find out that you're a financial fraud, that you tricked people to get here, and that your life generally will be very different. People will look at you differently. Maybe then you'll die, and maybe it doesn't matter, but that's your life. Do you want to take the deal? I'm surprised how many people say yes. I would say 50-50. People say yes, they take that deal. They'll have 40 years of a good life for a bad reputation at the end. Be careful with people like that, is what happens in my brain, right? Because that is the Murdoch story. That is what Murdoch did. His son's committed suicide, his name is in the dirt. No one ever wants to hear that name again in their life, and a lot of people were hurt. So I use open questions and philosophy to figure out whether or not it's someone I want to work with, and you should do it too, because you don't want to be in partnership with someone that doesn't care in the same way that you care. I'm not here to judge what is right and what is wrong. I'm here to tell you how you can check that what's right for you aligns in your business, in your culture of your business, and more importantly, in your day-to-day personal life. So you've identified what you love and what you don't love. You've checked the moral code in every way you can of the person you want. You've drawn lines in the sand what you're not willing to do, and you know what this person looks like. The final thing is Post-it. Now, Post-it is very simple. You start telling people you're looking for this person. You post it on LinkedIn. You post it everywhere. You ask people. You make it clear this is what you're looking for. You look out for it in cafes, when you're out having dinner, when you're at the supermarket. You look out for this person because they're out there. You just have to have your eyes wide open. Of course, you can go on helpbank.com and ask people if they know someone like this. You can use the tools around you to get what you need. But ultimately, you've now set yourself up with every chance of finding a co-founder. Now, you're going to have to sort out the equity structure and get that right. I'm going to come to that in a minute. But that is how you find a co-founder. And in my opinion, it's one of the most powerful things you can do to ensure success in your business. Next up, how to sell. Now, anybody can sell. It's a system. It's a philosophy, and anyone can do it. I don't care your background. You can be an introvert. You can still sell and understand the systems of selling. And if you are presently selling, I promise you, you are missing a few tricks that I'm going to try and help you with now. First up, how to sell is not what you have been taught. It is not, here's my product, this is how much it is, and this is what it does. The first thing in sales that you need to learn, and the number one thing I learned through the hard way of doing it, is sell the sizzle, not the steak. So what does that mean? Well, let's pick one of the best products ever sold, Apple products. Steve Jobs used to always set up events where he'd invite 3,500 people into a room, all the right tech reporters, all the right people, and he would then present to them the sizzle. He would not say, here's a phone with an Intel processor that has this and has that. He would talk about how this product was for the game changers, for those that wanted to do things differently, for the creative types. He was very specific about what the sizzle is. He didn't sell the steak. Now, in that process of selling, there's a couple of other lessons that Steve Jobs teaches us. Of course, he doesn't sell to millions through social media. He picks a community, 3,500 people in a room. He sells to them. He connects to them. He talks to them. And they go and talk to the rest of the world. Getting someone on your side selling for you is one of the most powerful ways to sell. The number one salesperson in my last company was my accountant. Why? Because I gave her the tools to sell. I told her what we did and how we did it. I showed her the sizzle through the numbers. We helped clients be more successful. We helped businesses starve off bankruptcy. We made sure companies did well, and she was proud of that. She would sell the sizzle. She'd sit with her other CFO friends at lunch, and she'd say, we saved a company from going bankrupt. We made one company an extra £1 million a month they didn't expect. She would tell people the outcome. She wouldn't say, oh, I work for Fluid and we have marketing ideas. That's not exciting. She talked about the results. She talked about the philosophy, the sizzle. The second element of learning to sell is understand the process of selling. So many people don't. So many people start on what I call the third step, and you need to do 2 steps first before you ever start implementing the third step in sales. So the first step in any sales is understand your customer. Now, it sounds so obvious, and I'm shocked how many people don't do it. I often get emails that say, Dear John, or they say, Dear Simon, I really love what you're doing X, and they haven't actually researched what I'm really doing. However, when someone sends me something and understands what I'm doing, is clear on how they can bring value to me, I sit up and I listen. And that is the number one thing that people don't do in the first step of sales. Enough research. They do not spend enough time understanding if the person they're talking to actually needs them. They spend way too much time selling to people that don't actually need what they've got to sell. Don't waste your time with people that don't need what you've got. Focus on the people that do need what you've got. First step is, do they need you? Get to know them. The second step in this 3-step process to get any sales done is understand the person you're working with in the context of, do you like them? This element of sales is so powerful. If you can have a real connection with the person you're selling to, a genuine connection, not a fake connection, it is something that will help you get through all sorts of difficult times in that relationship. You need to like each other. You need to genuinely like each other. And if you meet someone who needs what you need, but they don't like you and you don't like them, one, the sale probably won't go ahead. But even worse, the sale might go ahead. Then you'll be working with someone that doesn't like you and you don't like them. If they're rude, they're abrupt, you go out for dinner, they're rude to the waiter, if it doesn't appeal to you, drop them. Do not work with these people. It might be hard, you might want the revenue, but I promise you will not build a business that will last if you sell to the wrong people. So, first step, do they need you? Do you need them? Second step, do they like you? Do you like them? If you do these two things well, the final step, and let's call it the deal, it will happen. Because if they like you and they need you, they will work with you to make a deal happen. I have done enormous deals every single time in my career. I've done the first 2 steps right. It's no problem. In fact, I have said how much I would like for, say, example, a contract, and that client's come back to me and given me even more, told me the budget, given me insight into how to make sure we get the work. So it's so important to not just go in there cold with what you've got to sell, but go in there understanding the person and making sure it lasts. If you follow these 3 steps, I promise you, you'll get every single sale done. Now, there's one more final thing I want to tell you about sales. You've got to think long term. There was a study done by Harvard. They analysed the best salespeople in the world. And the top 50 salespeople in the world would, on average, approach someone to get a deal done 5 times. They would send them an email, for example, and then a few weeks later, they'd send them a follow-up email. And then maybe they'd send them a brochure or contact them through social media. They would basically contact maximum of 5 times before they would actually consider that lead dead. And that was their mistake. And we're talking about the leading salespeople. But the top 1% of salespeople, which it turns out I am one of these people. I didn't know it at the time. I now know it looking at the research. The top 1% of salespeople do something very different. When I started Fluid, I wrote down all 50 companies I wanted to work with in the building of this business. And there were big names on there. And from day one, I built a system to reach out to them by hook or by crook in some way every single month. For example, at Christmas, I would wish them a Merry Christmas, send them a card. Chinese New Year, I'd send them something. When I learned something about their industry that I thought could be useful to them, a bit of research, I would send it to them. I would always make sure that every single month I made contact with them in some way, not to sell necessarily, but to build a relationship, to get to know what their needs were. In some cases, I got those clients quite quick, but in the majority of the businesses, it took me, for example, 9 years to get some of those companies on board. Every single month for 9 years, I would approach those companies. And that's the secret to it. It's a long game. You have to apply yourself, build a system in sales that lasts. It cannot be one email, they don't reply, or one email and they say no. You've got to keep staying in contact with them. Building things like email lists are still very powerful. No, it's not as cool these days as being popular on TikTok, but I promise you, having an email list where you can contact that person regularly, keep an update of what you're doing, keep up to date with what they're doing, will ensure a sale at some point in the future, as long as you're politely persistent. I promise you, you follow these rules in sales, your life will change. I will add, in sales, people don't bring their personality into the mix enough. You've got to be yourself, be honest, be authentic. In sales, it's not about selling someone a car that doesn't work. That is bullshit. That is how people are projecting what sales looks like. Sales is about selling someone a car they actually need. I have seen in my own life, when I've gone to buy a car, the best salespeople tell me, you don't want this car, you want that car, in another showroom where they don't get the commission. I've actually had that happen. And when I saw that happen, I hired that person because that person is thinking long term. They're not trying to sell me a car to make the commission. They're building a relationship with me, and that is what you need to do to be successful in sales. Next up, how to market. This is a deep subject, but I'm going to try and give you all the knowledge I've gained in decades of building some of the most complicated marketing structures there is. Now, marketing is one of the most important pieces in making a business work. And when I think about this subject, it's so complicated. I honestly think, because I know everything about this subject, it's like rocket science. I will start off perhaps by teaching you that in marketing, 50% of what you spend will probably be wasted. So if you've got 1 million views but the wrong views, it's wasted. So marketing is about really experimenting. Now I mentioned earlier when talking about sales, sell the sizzle, not the steak. Of course that applies in marketing too. But marketing is actually about connecting with people over time. The biggest example is branding. If you get the branding right, people will resonate. You're probably a victim of this. You would rather buy an Apple than an X other brand, right? You've become a victim of good marketing. And when, for example, the iPod launched, people all thought the product did the selling, it was such a good product, that's why it did so well. No, when they launched the iPod, they spent more money marketing that product than any company had ever spent on marketing a product ever. Marketing is not one thing. Marketing is a complex structure combining PR, brand messaging, product market fit. If you don't know product market fit, I can cover this later, but basically you've got to make sure that the people you're talking to will resonate to the product that you're selling or the service that you're selling. And marketing, in my opinion, is actually number one thing. It's understanding who your customer is. Now, often in business build, you'll see businesses focus on niches to start with. Now, it doesn't have to stay in that niche, but it's a great place to start. So Facebook, for example, it started off in universities. And by connecting people in universities, of course, now it became connected to everybody all over the world. But they understood their customer. They knew what that customer was looking for. And in the early days of Facebook, they put a feature on there called single or available. I can't remember the exact terminology, but they basically created a feature that let you know if that person was in a relationship or not. And that was designed to help the university students understand the dynamics between their fellow university students. And so they knew their market audience and they then marketed that feature. People would then go around saying, did you see Sarah? She's suddenly single. And that would be the marketing for their product. They built a tool in the platform that became what people spoke about, that created the marketing for you. And in my opinion, that's the holy grail of marketing. And this brings me on to point 2. I call this the staircase philosophy. So the best way for me to teach you this is to tell you what I have recently done. So weirdly, a few months ago, a staircase came up for sale in London. It's the first time a staircase had ever been for sale in London. It's ridiculous. And I heard it on the news that this staircase was for sale. And I told my brain instantly, we're going to buy it. Now, I didn't have an exact plan of what I was going to do with the staircase, but what I knew was that staircase symbolized something for my business, which was step by step, you can get anywhere you want. But also, I knew I could newsjack. That staircase was a sensation. People didn't know why someone was selling a staircase. And 2 days after hearing it on the news, I owned it. I spent £26,000 buying it at auction. And then we did a couple of clever things that hopefully symbolize how marketing works. First up, as soon as we bought the staircase, the news channels that had reported it was for sale jumped on us. I knew they would. And they wanted to know why we had bought a staircase. And that gave us an opportunity to get on the front page of the New York Times, on the front page of the BBC, in every single newspaper around the world. Millions of US dollars worth of coverage for our platform because we bought a staircase. It doesn't seem relevant, but doing these wild things, these crazy things, can actually make a huge difference. One of the things that I always loved in marketing was when flash mobs were a thing. And what happened was suddenly you get a whole shopping mall, people would start dancing, and everyone would wonder what it was, right? That is brilliant marketing. Now, it might not sell your product exactly in that exact moment, but over time, it allows you to have reach and expansion and uniqueness to you that will help you stand out, because that's what it's about. It's about standing out. So by buying a staircase, we then evolved it. We got all this PR, millions of dollars worth of free PR for a staircase. Then we put a doorbell at the bottom of that staircase and we said, if you've got a dream, press a button. We'll then upload your dream to our 4 million following and get you free exposure. Well, that was what the press needed to do a follow-up story on it. Once you bought the staircase, what did you do with it? And they wrote all about that. But also, we built a whole new way of helping people on the back of a staircase that was for sale. I knew it symbolized helping people step by step. And then the final step in marketing, we all need partners. Marketing isn't about promoting something on your own. We then want to get a partner like Ring Doorbell or Amazon, who own Ring Doorbell, on board to sponsor the doorbell, to sponsor the staircase, to help us reach even more people. And then suddenly they pay for our marketing. And so marketing isn't a standalone thing. Marketing isn't a non-living organic product. You have to see it as living. You have to see it as evolving. And you have to see it as something that you do that pushes the envelope. Now, marketing is connected to sales. If you have a sales team, in a way, when they ring someone up, how they speak to someone, how they treat someone, that is also marketing. That's brand marketing. However that person receives your phone call, receives your interaction with them, will affect your brand. And that is marketing. Nike, for example, how do they do marketing? Well, they endorse the very best athletes in the world. Of course, in some cases, they make shoes with those very successful athletes. They are lining themselves up with these people that are incredibly successful. What does Apple do? Apple links to creative people. So therefore, everybody wants to have some sort of creativity in their life, beauty in their life. So they buy the product they think is for the creative people, right? IBM Notebook was a better product, but people didn't want that. It didn't symbolize something cool and sexy and creativity. So I think marketing is about, again, similar to sales, selling the sizzle, but it's also about understanding who your customer is, how to reach that niche, and then how to work with that niche to expand into the wider world if you want to scale. It's the staircase method. What's your staircase? What's going to make you stand out? How can you evolve that thing that makes you stand out and go even further? Number 3 is systems. When you're doing marketing, it is such an overwhelming thing. There's so many different ways you can do it. You can do email marketing. You can do social media. You can do PR. You can do branding. You can do events. I mean, the list never ends. So how do you decide which one to do? Well, first of all, whatever you do, you've got to build a system to do it. So if it is email marketing, then you have a good data collection system. You have a good data management system. And then you have a good way of pushing out the content to that database. And whatever one of these things you do, if you do all of them or you do one of them, do them well. Do not do all of them and all of them badly. I see so many people with, on their website, Twitter and Facebook and Instagram links, and then you click through to them and they're dead. You're better off doing one well. Now, I think marketing is something where you should spread your bet. You want to do many different ways, what I call entrances into your business. You want to do many of them as you can. But do not overstretch yourself. It's better to do one platform on social media really well than try and spread yourself thin. But if you set up a system for doing your social media, there is a chance you can do all of them well with the same amount of resources doing one of them well. So for example, on my social media, I have one core video and then we edit it in-app for each of the channels. So we don't have to record separate videos for each of the channels, but we do in-app edit them so they're actually tailored to that particular platform's nuances, be it their font or their image. So you can actually set up a system to do all of these marketing things. But the key, of course, is not only just systems, but making sure you pick what works for you. Now, when it comes to marketing, one of the big mistakes I see people get taught is marketing is about having the staircase only. It's not about having the staircase only. It is about applying what you like to do as a founder, or maybe what your team likes to do, into your marketing strategy. As an example, if you don't like talking on camera, that's not your thing. As long as you're not hiding away from learning something new and you genuinely don't like to do it, but for example, you love to write, then doing an email marketing strategy is probably right for you. Posting on LinkedIn is probably the correct platform for you. Sure, you'll hear people talking about how good TikTok is and how much benefit they got from it, but it doesn't work for you. It's not sustainable for you. It's not something you're going to enjoy. And marketing is something fun. This is something I want you to take away. No one talks about it, but marketing is meant to be fun. I took my son to buy that staircase. We had a laugh. Once we got the staircase, we had a laugh cleaning it up. We had a laugh putting a blimp on top of it. We had a laugh putting a doorbell on the front of it. We enjoyed the whole bloody thing. And if you don't enjoy it, what's the point? Marketing is about enjoying it. That's why I see brands do well. I'll give you an example. Starbucks marketing in the early days was two things. First, they would take good locations, sometimes quite close to each other. So instead of getting a billboard advertising Starbucks, they'd open up another Starbucks. And even if it was loss-making, as long as it wasn't more expensive in its loss than a billboard, they were better off having a store. Then people could have the experience. They never did any billboards. It's changed now, and I would argue it's not as good a brand anymore, but they opened up locations. That was one of their marketing strategies. The second thing that they did that was really clever is they looked after their staff, which sounds really obvious, doesn't it? But they did. They talk about their staff as partners. The baristas are partners. In some respects, their internal training manual talked about their baristas as the customer. And it worked. In the early days of Starbucks, to say what you like about them today, but in the early days of Starbucks, when I used to walk in there, a barista would know my name, they'd know what drink I wanted, and they were just working for Starbucks, but they cared because they were looked after. They were given medical care, for example. They were given full-time medical care even if they were part-time staff. They were given insurance and looked after, and they were given days off if they didn't feel very well. They were looked after. And I think that this is also part of marketing. It might not sound it, but if your people don't represent you, then good luck making everything else represent you, because those people will create all the things that represent you. So do include fun into your business. Do look at the nuances of your business and figure out what is going to be your staircase, and ultimately apply your marketing love to something that's sustainable, that's going to be enjoyable, that's going to be able to actually deliver the very thing that you want it to deliver, which I think should always be the promise of a better future for your customers. Next up, how to PR your business. Now, some of these things are interconnected, and sales and marketing all connect to how to get PR. But I'm going to give you some hacks and some insights in how PR works. And it is quite a complicated subject, but it's something, if you get right, can be a game changer for your business. Now, first up, I'll say getting PR has to be very targeted. I know plenty of people that have got PR for the money they've raised in their company, and it will go out to platforms like TechCrunch. It will make them feel good, but it had no impact on their business other than to make them feel good, which is fine, I guess. But I do think PR should be more strategic. I'd rather spend time reaching the press and actually getting a tangible result and not just playing to ego. So recently, for example, I was featured on the BBC News. They talked about what we were doing at the Doorbell, where people could pitch their dreams. And this led to hundreds of people finding out about it, going to our staircase, pitching their dream and helping them make their dream happen. Now that, in my opinion, is targeted marketing. Equally, I have done recently an article in a business journal that got zero reaction. Now, I was proud to be in the business journal. I don't want to say which one it is so I don't insult them, but ultimately it actually led to no value as far as what I want to do, which is help people do what they love and make sure people know there's a service out there for free to help them do what they love. So PR is very important to be targeted. And so I write that down first. Now, targeting can also be subjective, because a bit like marketing itself and sales, of course, sometimes you do need to cast the net wide and get as much coverage as you can. But if you do start to target your actual needs, it's much easier to get PR. I'll give you an example. If, for example, you want to let people know that you are now selling cherries on the side of the street, the best thing to do is get some PR in the local area that you live. Now, as much as it might be nice to say you've started a cherry farm selling cherries on the side of the street to make that farm work, probably could get you in a mainstream news channel, it won't necessarily lead to sales in the location in which you sell those cherries. So targeting and understanding exactly who you're trying to reach is actually the key. And it's more likely that if you are selling cherries in East Sussex, the East Sussex Times will cover you. It's more relevant, more chances of actually getting the PR than, say, for example, the BBC covering it, because it's not necessarily going to be that interesting. You could spend a lot of time and money reaching those people and then not cover you. The second thing I'll teach you about PR is journalists are lazy. So if you understand this and understand if you provide everything for them, then they don't need to do any work. You're more likely to get the press coverage. So what I always do is I actually write the press release like it's the actual story you want written, with a good headline that makes them happy that they're not selling you, because that's, journalists don't want to write and sell you, they want to write something that's interesting for the reader. So making a good subject line that's good for the reader, making the story good for the reader, I do all the work for the journalist. And then things like photos, I take high resolution photos and I send them with the press clip to make sure they've got everything they need. All they have to do is say yes to the story and then put their own touch on it. Job done. They're human beings. They want to go out for lunch if they can. So if you can make it possible for them to go out for lunch and do their job, then you will win in PR. Too many people are lazy. They send press releases that are generic and they don't tailor it to the journalist they're writing to. So the other thing you need to do is research that journalist. Back to the targeting, you need to understand what that journalist writes about, what that journalist is interested in, and almost write in their style if you want that particular journalist to write about you. The third thing on PR I'll tell you is, there is a lot of companies out there that will tell you they can get you PR. Please be careful. Now, as much as it might be nice to just pay someone to do this, I have discovered doing the PR yourself, especially if you're a small business, can pay huge dividends. Why? Because you can make a relationship direct with the journalist. And how do you find these journalistic contacts? That's what the PR companies tell you they've got. You can go for a newspaper and find them. You can Google them. You'll find them quite quick. One big hack I'll give you is Twitter in particular is really good to get hold of journalists. If you start following the journalists that you want to write about you and you start engaging on their posts, I would say that's one of the best ways to start building up a relationship with a journalist. Most people will reply to comments or read a comment that you've made on one of their posts. And weirdly enough, often journalists don't have big followings and they don't actually have a lot of comments. So you can start making a relationship, start commenting on something. If they post something about global warming and you've got a product that's helping reduce global warming, then you will get noticed if you start commenting on a story they've done about it. Start being part of their thinking when it comes to, I need someone to help me write this story. I need someone to give me a quote to make this story better. Start becoming part of that journalist's life. And it starts with just following them on Twitter or replying to one of their comments, engaging on one of the stories they've already written. Even online, things like Daily Mail, the journalists will read the comments on their own story. So engage. Engage is the number one thing I can tell you when it comes to getting PR from journalists. And finally, I have been involved in many conversations where I know brands have not worked with someone because they saw on someone's social media that they posted something obscene or rude or stupid. Remember that you as a business owner will always be the number one PR engine. Whatever you post up, be conscious, be careful. Think about your brand, think about the image that you're projecting. And I can't tell you enough how important this is, because if you do the first few things I've just mentioned, you connect with the press, you know who you're targeting, and you're not lazy, you help them do it. If a journalist sees that you are out of control or inappropriate, they will not risk their job to write about you. So learn to be disciplined. Learn to be the brand. PR starts with one person having respect for you. So make sure you're disciplined. Don't be lazy yourself. Next up, one of my favorite subjects, one of the questions I get asked the most, how to get an investor. Learning how to get an investor can dramatically change the trajectory of your business. Equally though, just before I go into how to get an investor, I want you to think carefully about whether or not you need an investor. Now, I have invested in 78 companies. You can go on my website, simonsquibb.com, and look at some of the companies I've invested in. I have seen it all. And sometimes, if you get the wrong investor or get an investor for the wrong reasons, you will have a new boss and your life will become a nightmare. It will be easy at the beginning when you get the money and will get harder over time if you do it wrong. I will try to teach you how to not get it wrong, but equally, please ask yourself, is there another way to make the business work? And I'm going to touch on other ways that you could make it work, even if you don't get an investor, within this How to Get an Investor chat. Now, there are quite a few different ways to get an investor depending on the stage of your business and how much you're trying to raise. If you're trying to raise money in the early days of a business, I would say to you, the more traction you have in your business, the easier it is to get an investor. Now, that does not mean to say if you just have an idea, you can't get an investor. You definitely can. There's just less people that will fund it. So just like the sales stuff I taught you earlier, it's probably better to make sure that you actually know who you're targeting when you're getting an investor. What is the profile of the person you want? So if you're going after someone that perhaps will fund a business that has no traction, it's just an idea, then remember, those people's profile, they probably want quite a lot of equity. They probably want some involvement in the business to make sure